Well, we're approaching around 18. We might just kick off. There's likely to be more joining. As said, we've got a lot of numbers, but people do come in and out. I know that we've got Simon Page who will join us at some point and needs to, but has been called into a oh, Simon is here. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I'm here, Shane. But
Right.
yeah, I do have to leave at some point for
Okay.
council meeting.
So we did notice, or we did note, we've got Simon who's going to talk in a couple of instances around some things happening at Cassowary and about infiltration. Simon's also been called now into an exec meeting. So at a point where it might be, we might juggle a little bit of things that go on depending how Simon sees his work, and we might drag him in a little bit earlier if needed to talk about those things. So that's probably a small, change to our plans, or it may not, it may just flow from there. So just okay. Right. Look, I think if we're ready, we might just kick things off, and as people join, great, that'll work. So, from my perspective, I'd like to thank everyone for their interest to, join and participate in this forum. Little bit of background: we've kind of had a couple of forums we call communities of practice in the past, and again, look, as a vendor, they're not intended to be sales activities or marketing activities. What we've seen is that as we've roamed around the countryside, particularly areas of infiltration, etc., people are really working hard at these areas, but often, in places like Moree and etc., where you're a long way from everywhere and people are doing a great job, but don't have an opportunity to sit in a digital room or a physical room to discuss those challenges. And we also see that, there's a broad spectrum of where people are at with meeting those challenges. And it's really got nothing to do with, the skills of individuals, but it's certainly got a lot to do with the capacity and how people are drawn apart and how much time they have to spend on these things. And because of that, we find that in some places there's really a deep, rich knowledge because they do have, fortunate to have those people, and those people are allowed to sort of concentrate on those activities. And so we thought if we run these sorts of forums, every now and then and focus on these particular topics, then perhaps, it's just one step for the sector to really make some steps to, I guess, as we've said, share some knowledge, participate outside these forums where they find that there's some sort of synergy, connect and reach out to those various people that they find, might be able to lend some weight to their own challenges or just challenge an opinion, then we think that that's a good thing. So, this is a second round at it, and said we've got about 21 people. I think we'll probably grow that to about 30 before the meeting rounds out. And we had a lot more people wanting to join, but time didn't permit, and they would like to get some information back from this. And I know that ranges from places like Southern Downs councils and quite a few councils in Queensland that just couldn't make it for today. So that's the background. In the context, what we can do as an organisation too, and we're start today is we're fortunate to work with a lot of really good tier one organisations, and we've got some people here from SA Water as an example of that. And we had hoped that, we could bring those into some of these meetings and allow some of those organisations to share, some of those experiences and knowledge back into local government water utilities. And hopefully, again, that's just another area where things can be leveraged and, again, more opportunities for knowledge. So that's the background. That's where we are. And as we move into this, just to, reiterate that, we're fortunate and thankful to have Keith Hyatt from Kempsey help facilitate. We don't want to necessarily be in front of everyone. We'd rather, again, this is for councils and about councils. So as much as possible, that is the theme that will run, and Keith will help with facilitating that. Now, during the exercise and during this, we're very open to questions at any time. If it's, we have to put them till the end of something, we'll, but please, the whole idea is to challenge things, to share things. So as we go through, put your hand up and we'll leave it to Keith to kind of work out how we'll do that. But that's the forum. And in just dot points, so after me now, we will head into Andrew Todd having a presentation with SA Water. That'll be followed by the 6 councils that are doing collaboration. We're going to talk to those councils about their journey and why they're doing it. And Keith will help facilitate that. And then we'll wrap up at the end with, we've got Graham Bayliss from Parks. Again, Simon from Cassowary is doing some great work. Claire from Midwest, and they're going to talk about their journey that they've been undertaking for a few years. And with that, there's a little bit of warts and all. It's hopefully, it's good news, but there is messages that need to be, pushed out, and they're quite happy to be share those as well. Again, questions and answers at any time. So without any more ado, I'm going to hand over to Andrew to begin his presentation with SA Water, and after that we'll hand over to Keith to help facilitate the rest of the meeting.
Sure, thanks, Shane. I think if calling it Andrew's presentation with SA Water is kind of bigging up my involvement, it's really me introducing the SA Water folks. So let me start by thanking Scott and Josh for their time. It is, as you said, Shane, it's a great example of how bigger organisations can share their experience and their knowledge with the broader community. Scott is a senior scientist on the water science team at SA Water with 15 years of experience. And Josh is the acting manager of Ops and Maintenance Performance and Technology team with an 18-year career in data and performance analysis. And I would hazard a guess that there aren't too many councils that have senior scientists and things like that, senior data analysts and so forth, purely because of the size and scale of an organisation like SA Water. So that gives us a great opportunity to plumb the profound depths of their knowledge. Now, I've had a long involvement with SA Water. I've had the privilege of working on some of SA Water's data projects dating back probably longer than I'd care to remember, 20 years probably, where I was involved at a technical capacity at the time in modelling some of the bulk water transfers and the energy costs of moving water around, which were substantial. With an effort to use data and technology to try and shave. I think the objective was to try and shave somewhere between 5 and 10% off of the energy bill. So that was a major project and ran for some period of time, but it gives you a bit of an idea about how long SA Water has been pursuing the use of data to help to drive some of those efficiencies and values and benefits. And the presentation today is not specifically about infiltration as such. It's actually a little bit more about SA Water's approach to data infrastructure and how they manage data. It's like any other organisation, there are challenges. When you want to get the best value out of your data, you need to have the technology infrastructure. You need to have the right ownership of the data sources and the tech stack that supports the delivery of data to where it needs to be. That topic is something that I'm quite passionate about because I know that many organisations struggle with it, and there's a certain inertia. Things don't happen because where do you even start with some of that? So I'm very keen to hear from SA Water their story and some of the specific challenges that they have. And as part of this, we will learn a little bit about the tech stack that they use. So that's enough from me. Perhaps we can hand over to Scott and Josh to share their insights.
Thanks, Andrew, for the intro, and you've sort of touched on a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Let me know if you guys can see my slide. You can? Brilliant. And now let me see if I can drive it. Here we go. So yeah, as Andrew's already mentioned, I'm Scott Buckley. Josh Keane is co-presenting with me today. Yeah, I've got 15 years experience in the industry. I was very lucky to join SA Water about 4 years ago and sort of start getting involved in their data operations side of things. We built a new team. That was really fun experience, and Josh has come into that, and that's been fantastic. In a former life, I actually lived up in Townsville and did some work with Simon back in the day with Simon and Shane, and we had lots of fun times. So, yeah, hi Simon. Yeah, so we'll kick on. Josh, I'll hand over to you to run through the start of the preso.
Yep. Hi guys, it's nice to meet you all. I thought I'd just start with a brief overview of what SA Water does, our network and our assets. So you can see there's quite a few bits and pieces on this page. It's actually a little dated now. So we're currently spending $1.5 billion over the next 4 years to grow and expand our wastewater and water services to around 50,000 new homes by the 2050s. So quite a bit of investment in this space, and this will be updated with a lot more pump stations and things like that in the very near future. Scott? As you can see, we cover quite a bit of area as well. So South Australia, it's a big state. It's very sparse. The majority of our infrastructure is based around where the majority of the population is, which is obviously around Adelaide, but we are all over the state. And you can see right at the top of, or right up to the north of South Australia there, we've got dedicated remote communities teams, and they supply water to those communities there. So just to give you a bit of size and scale, the drive to Adelaide up to those communities is actually longer than the drive from Melbourne to Sydney. So and here we have, we're currently underway in a major project which is redesigning data governance. And so the status we are at now, that we have data product owners. They're assigned from the group of general managers, and they come from each of the different areas at SA Water. They sign off on all the final and the major decisions that are made in the data space. The data stewards are responsible for ensuring data consistency, compliance, accuracy, and reliability. That's where Scott and I come in, essentially. So we're at the data steward level, and we are subject matter experts from around the business.
Oh, the camera. And mute.
And yeah, we perform the day-to-day tasks and make decisions based on our areas of expertise. So as I said, we're currently undergoing a major project. The end state of this is to upload all of our data into the Azure cloud. So it's a full revamp of our data landscape. We're migrating all of our BI workloads from on-prem to Azure. And so that'll become part of our new data and analytics platform, so the DNA platform. The project aligns to all of our strategies and future ways of thinking. We're aiming to modernise our data practices and architecture, reduce the security risk. Cybersecurity is a big thing at the moment. We want to simplify our processes so they're easy to understand for analysts and data architects, and then also reduce our reliance on key personnel, which I think is a risk in all big organisations. We rely too much on the people and not the actual skills. So just a bit of background on our team, well, my team. So this team was created in late 2022 to become a centre of excellence for all business reporting in the operations and maintenance group. We've got a pretty simple purpose, which is to make sure the business is making well-informed and data-driven decisions. So we've currently got a team of 10 analysts plus myself, and then we have a manager as well as 3 tech and readiness advisors as well. So we're a fairly large team, but we do find ourselves touching quite a few projects across the whole of SA Water. So I guess where we're focusing today, our operational data comes from a lot of different sources, with our GM, Chris Young, being the data owner, as I mentioned before. We use Maximo for all works and asset management, Mercury for financial reporting, and SAM is our safety system. And I guess where we're focusing today is our SCADA and PI data. And so effectively, that pushes real-time control and operational data from plants and networks into our PI system. And yeah, we'll focus on that today. So PI time series data can come from SCADA, IoT devices, or we've actually got a manual data entry app that's been designed in-house. Our history can go back to 2001. However, most of the work or the new work, we generally backfill tags for about 2 years. So that gives us enough time for business trending purposes. So O&M is one of the biggest groups, obviously. So we've got over 1,300 staff members, and 3/4 of those are based in the field. So essentially 3/4 of them are relying on this kind of data every single day in their day-to-day work. And yeah, as I mentioned, a few years ago, the business designed an internal manual data entry app. It's worth calling out because it's really filled a lot of the gaps for us in our processes and reporting. So it allows us to overlay data that's manually entered with the other data sources that we have. So from lab data and IoT data. And so they can help contribute to things like operational monitoring and our performance reporting, as well as our regulatory reporting that's due on an annual basis. So the app's pretty extensively used in the regions now, and we're soon to roll out to Metro and also maintenance. So they'll use it to capture a few of their pieces of data from out in the field as well.
Over to me, I think. Thanks, Josh. So Josh has sort of, I guess, taken us through that like big picture, the corporate data structure, the data model, the data governance. It's really important to SA Water as a business. Where he and the team are really focused, though, is in operations and maintenance activities. And what's particularly interesting, I guess, about this is it's a bit unique because it's tend to be time series type data that gets generated, as he said, from things like SCADA or IoT devices or those manual entry fields in capture, which means that a lot of those governance projects actually ignore it, and we just sort of have to make it. We do our best to make our time series data or our operations data still adhere to our corporate structures and our corporate governance, but it does sometimes sit a little bit to the side, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But for those who aren't familiar, PI is essentially, in a nutshell, I know I've got a lot of words on the page here, but in a nutshell, it's our way of getting that SCADA data or that time series data out of the complex system of, say, SCADA into a way that the business can actually use it in different ways. So it allows us to use that data to make data-driven decisions. It's great for monitoring, the live monitoring of flows and pumps and valves and tanks and all those treatment processes that you might see in a SCADA environment, but we can get it out of SCADA. It has some extra abilities in terms of being able to have notifications or have rules around that data, so we can have early detections of anomalies or performance issues. So not, things that, kind of go ding before an alarm. And also allows us to do a lot of reporting and compliance tracking, and allows us to automate a lot of our reporting as well. So there's a lot of power in the PI system. PI system comes with a thing called PI Asset Framework, PIAF. It's something that sort of sits on top of the raw PI data, and this is the really important part for us because it organizes the data into a really logical structure. So we kind of have an asset. We sort of follow. You can do it any way you want, but we tend to do it in in a way that follows our asset hierarchy. So you'll sort of have like a, our treatment sites listed, and then below that all the different processes, and then down to sort of like the equipment or the flow or the chemical level. And it means that in terms of reporting, we can kind of roll these data that might be, second type data into daily values or monthly values. It allows us to standardize how we do analytics of this data. It allows us to have templates, so it's really easy to roll across all our sites, and it allows us to do that kind of event tracking and notification. So that's where we can do that, sort of catch things before they go out of whack, basically. Why does it matter to us? Well, it simplifies how we access the data. So instead of having to go into a SCADA environment, and do some manual trending one by one, we can kind of pull into dashboards, into Power BI, into Grafana is what we use for live monitoring, into different types of reports. So that's particularly useful. It then allows us to use this data for things like our planning, forecasting. That can be like chemical or growth or anything really. And our asset teams use it to determine out their sort of asset strategies or our asset prioritizations. It does help us troubleshoot, so it lets us, do trending and look at events that have happened, and kind of layer those data together rather than looking at things one by one. It allows us to create reports where we can pull all different types of data, those data that Josh mentioned earlier. So we can look at, our Maximo asset data trended with our SCADA data all in sort of one place. Then, this sort of leads us to start collaborating when it comes to talking about data and operations treatment, operations performance, and lets us start making good insights or have good insights into where we need to make improvements in our operations teams. So what does that look like for us? And by the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in along the way. I know we're kind of covering a lot here as we go. So for us, PIF and PI system has become really critical in our treatment operations in particular.
Is this on the I&I meeting?
In our in our planning, really important for our water securities teams. We have a lot of license conditions and stuff like that.
They've got
all good. We have multiple servers, so these there's sort of test servers where we can build things and test out our analysis. We have our production databases that are very critical to actually, our ongoing sort of support of our operations teams. Because of the way this has sort of been a bit of a slow burn, our early iterations of using this system were very experimental. We've got a lot of kind of legacy databases or test environments that are not really used anymore, or they're broken, or they're not very good. So we are going through a process of sort of cleaning this up, but it was sort of that point in time where we were just sort of learning about how to use this stuff and getting our knowledge up. So what we do basically is a lot of the time we get SCADA tags. So, it might be a flow tag or whatever you're looking at. And we basically do a direct map of that tag into a PI pointer or a PI tag. What we then have is a bit of a corporate database cleansing, which removes sort of bad inputs from the SCADA environment, or might be some limits, or some, if a flow meter starts going into negatives or something, it can clean that data up just a little bit. It just sort of touches it and just cleans it up, so it's a little bit easier to do analysis with. Then normally what happens is our different business units will use this data and do their own sort of cleaning or analysis on that tag. And so you can sort of like track this as it goes through. So if you look at that bottom little box, from SCADA, you'll have a source tag. So this is, our SCADA node. I think it's an Ellison bore, and it's a flow totalizer. So when it gets cleaned up in our corporate database or a corporate cleansing database, it gets a new name, but you can see most of the name stays the same. So it just gets, that little name at the start, af.saw.filter. So that just lets you know that it's been cleansed. But then we might do a calculation. So we might want to go, all right, what was the flow for that entire day? And that's a calculation we can do in PyIF, and it just happens automatically every day. Once it's set up, it just happens, and that data is available. So, and then you can see it sort of keeps a lot of the naming structure, but we might do something like put a little, dash 1 day on the end just to signify what that actually means. So that's sort of how we the journey, I guess, of the data from that raw source data through to something that becomes more and more useful for our business. We do have a tag management system that was introduced fairly recently. I would love to say that this sort of has all our tag information in SCADA and Pi. It doesn't at the moment. It's really mainly for SCADA, so it's super useful for finding that source data, and working out what information you need to pull into a report or whatnot. But it's not at the moment. It's not capturing those sort of like those calculated tags. That's sort of something that would be great to have in the future. What does it look like? So, as I was sort of saying earlier, we kind of break this into different hierarchies. So if you look at this as an example of our regional wastewater treatment plant hierarchy, where under wastewater treatment, you can open it up and you can see different sites, Aldinga and Anguston. You can see under Anguston that we have different sort of sub-layers there that are like flow, influent, primary treatment, secondary treatment, our chemicals. So that's how it's set up in this hierarchical structure where you can sort of drill down to the level that you need. And once you get down to where you want, so in this case, you might be looking at something like our alum usage. We have a whole bunch of information that kind of can pop up about alum at Heathfield in this case, where you can see like our dose rates, what our daily costs of chemical usage was, what our actual chemical, the volume of usage. And so we kind of have, and you can do lots of different calculations. It's just sort of some of the stuff we do for our reporting purposes where we want to see, how we're doing, how we're tracking in terms of chemical budget and things like that. Just sort of another example where we kind of, you might look at our monthly reporting, is something we do as a team, is like things like, what's the volume of water coming into the plant, out of the plant, how much reuse did we have, chemical costs and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So we can, you can kind of, there's no real limit to some extent. We can do an awful lot. And it's a lot of stuff that we used to do manually in Excel, where this sort of, this PyIF engine just sort of picks this data up and does this on the fly. It does it in real time, and it becomes incredibly useful in terms of our reporting and our understanding of what's happening in our plants. Because of that situation I was talking about earlier about, we kind of started with a very sort of open and just learning, and people try different things. We've kind of got to the point where we needed governance in this space. So we do have a PyIF governance and standardization program. We've actually, as funded, we have support from GTS to help deliver this project, which is great because it's a lot of work, but it's really important work. It's about getting best practice in this environment. It's about standardizing those hierarchies I was showing you, because they've all been set up similar but slightly different. We want to mirror our asset structure as much as possible. It's about getting to that point where there is a single source of truth for all our operational data, that, you don't go to an assets team and they give you a different number to our operations or maintenance teams or something like that. We want these to be, everything to be really efficient, the analysis to be efficient, it to be reviewed, standardized, and this just gives us a lot of quality control of that data and what our outputs are. And it's going to introduce a lot of like change management and permissions for different user roles. So really define like what level of access does someone like Josh need versus someone like myself, who's probably in my new role, I'm probably more of a user rather than a creator of data. So my access should be different to his. And things like, that probably matter a lot to Josh and I, are things like we have like separate databases for our metro sites and our regional sites. That's just due to sort of historical reasons. But what we'd love to get is sort of like some really unified structures where we're trying to do the same thing, whether it's a regional plant, whether it's a metro plant. We're giving the same outputs. We're giving it to the same people, but we do it slightly differently. So we want to integrate a lot of those things into one big project. Very, very important. It's going really well. It's been running probably, getting close to a year. Not quite. So that's sort of big picture pie and a lot of our operational data. How do we use this data? What do we do with it? We then tend to pull this information into Power BI for reporting. Grafana is our live dashboarding. Excel can still be used for that kind of more ad hoc investigation. So we have a whole series of different sort of ways that we then use the data. So we've created, like our team have created what we call operator dashboards, where it's sort of, I guess, instead of trying to get the guys to just go through lots and lots of different SCADA dashboards, they can kind of go to certain pages and get a bit of a summary of how their plants are going. We have monthly performance reports in Power BI. We have a lot of metro, in particular KPI, because we've got some contractual contractual agreements in that space. Josh is going to shed some more light on that later. There's a lot of performance monitoring, so filter performances, for example. RO performance. There's lots of sort of different performance monitoring we can do in our treatment plants. We even use it with our chemical suppliers to send out automatic notifications for chemical deliveries, basically. So it'll send out some tank levels and, basically has helped automate that process of getting deliveries into some of our larger regional plants. And we're looking at expanding that to more regional plants. That's like a daily email that just comes out automatically. We have some really important sort of big statewide reporting, what we call WIS, Water Infrastructure Zone reports. So that's sort of a statewide water balance. So that big map that Josh showed earlier, that's sort of, we get all those different inputs into one big report. Met Daily is our daily. For our reservoirs, the guys go out and take daily readings and they put that into capture, and it all kind of comes into this environment. As I mentioned earlier, water securities. Some of this stuff's incredibly important because it's our licenses with our due and whatnot, where we can be pushing some of our bore licenses. We have network monitoring and notification set up, so things like pressures in a network, and Josh is going to show an example a bit later of one of those. Our manual data entry we've mentioned a couple of times, so that capture app is really important. We have our analytical control in our wastewater teams get entered, and so the guys are out there, they do their AQCs, they enter it into capture, and they get an automatic email sort of within seconds, basically letting them know whether they've passed or failed their test. So that's been a real process improvement and efficiency improvement. In the past, that was a very manual task. It would take a couple of weeks for them to find out if our instrumentation was actually passing our AQCs. And then there's a whole bunch of different models. The one that probably matters to Josh and I is a lot of our chemical forecasting for our budgeting and our planning. So we do a lot of chemical forecasting for the water treatment teams and wastewater treatment teams. So this is an example of a operator dashboard. It's very simple. Like, the idea of this is to be simple. It can be essentially it's live data. So the data is live. We can have some other data sources come in from things like our laboratory teams and cross-reference across that. We can have a bit of a stoplight system here as well. So if turbidity gets out of whack, it'll come up. So it's not the be all and end all, I guess, but it's a really easy way for guys to flick through and get a summary of how the plant's going. They can trend, they can drill into this data. Our technical support people tend to use it a lot as well. So coordinators and our TPOs can sort of get in there and, have a look at a whole range of plants that they're responsible for and work with the operators to make sure everything's going well. A similar one for our, we have iron removal plants down in the southeast of the state. So they're, sort of mini treatment plants. All it is pre-chlorination and filtration of our, some high iron bore waters. But yeah, we've sort of set these up fairly recently to help the guys down there as well. So they can look at, bore levels or their lab data, whether it's in or out of spec, tank levels, flows. So it sort of brings a lot of things into one place where they might have had to flick through 3 or 4 different reports plus SCADA to get this information. We can kind of get it all into one place for them and make it a lot more efficient. And then we sort of go up a step where we start bringing it into Power BI, and we tend to use Power BI more for like long-term trending and reporting. So we can do things like our historical flows at a certain plant. So you can see in this graph, we're looking at Heathfield wastewater treatment plant, what's coming into the plant month after month, effluent coming out, what we're in this case, we're doing a lot of discharge to environment, we're recycling or reusing, a very small proportion of the water. We have some reuse customers in our regional areas. Some are like 100% reuse, others not so much. And so we can kind of look at bigger, larger trends, right up to the point where we can actually do some like aggregated reporting. So all wastewater regional plants, how much effluent did we sort of pump out in the month? How much water did we reuse? And a lot of this sort of goes into certain monthly corporate reports, or like it gets used every month. And what would have taken the team in the past quite a lot of effort every month. It's still a lot of effort, but it's definitely a lot shorter and a lot quicker, a lot more automated than it used to be. That combination of using that PI system and the analytics of the PI system and then putting it into a nice automated report is really efficient for us. And sort of something that's a bit different, I kind of touched on it earlier, is our AQC program. So every month we have a laboratory, I'm sitting right next to it actually, that sends out, like blind samples to our teams, and they do some tests out on the site. So we've sort of automated that with our capture app. So they enter their results, they get that instant pass fail, but we've also automated the reporting side of it as well, because what used to happen is someone would sit down and spend a whole day going through spreadsheets, trying to work out who's passed and who hasn't. And, as Josh mentioned, it's a large team. So when we start talking about operations being field operations, maintenance teams, wastewater teams, and water treatment teams, it's a lot. So this process is now essentially 100% automated, where the guys enter their values, they get told if they passed, and this all just gets calculated up to, for September last month, they passed 93% of their tests in the wastewater team. They didn't do them all, so there's a pass and a completion result, and then it's sort of broken up into sub teams. So you can see the southeast team did a fantastic job, 100% pass, 100% completed, and the other teams, not doing badly, but they can got some areas to improve as well. And it means that this report is live. The coordinators can actually go and see if someone's struggling or where the issues could be. Something that sort of only really happens once a year, and it's sort of the bane of our existence, Josh, is annual reporting. I'm sure we probably all have some of this. We do a lot of it, and a lot of these measures end up getting rolled up into our EPA report. So we submit 25 regional wastewater treatment plant EPA reports to South Australian EPA. These are now, with the power of coding, of Python scripting, we've essentially fully automated this. So we can kind of press a button, it'll grab all that data and spit out a report. So that's a very recent improvement, and that's saved a couple of weeks of hard work. a lot of work to get there, but it's saved a lot of time. Same with our Department of Health report. That's one report, but it's got lots of different sites in there. So it's a lot of data, very similar data to the EPA reports, but it's in one report. So similar thing, we press a button and it spits out a report. So this is the first year we've done it this way, and it's saved a lot of time. And then there's a whole bunch of these sort of MPI, MPRs, our NGERS, our National Greenhouse Emissions Report, Cat 7 reporting, and we also report to the Essential Services Commissioners of South Australia, who is our SA Water has a regulator that we have to report to. So all of this sort of operational flow type data, we can, we save a lot of time, a lot of efficiency having the PI system help us do the calculations. And I guess I just wanted to sort of show you, I guess, what our big picture is. And a lot of this is a work in progress, guys. So it's not, I'm not going to pretend we are perfect at any of this, but this is kind of, I think, something that we're striving towards, which is having the right data tools for the right level. So what I showed you earlier, some operator dashboards, that's sort of the operator level. It's about monitoring the performance right now of a plant, using that live telemetry, using what we call water scope. That's our laboratory data that's being tested in our own labs here at SA Waterhouse, including their manual data from capture. And then we are trying to build what's probably newer for us as a team is building some really team level insightful reports. So for our field water quality team, this is where we're starting to bring some of that data we're talking about at the operator level, but combining it with things like our customer complaints, where they're happening, what type of complaints they are. That comes out of our Maximo system, SAM actions and incidences, so they can start really, working through where the issues are or what they need to do there and how they're, whether they're closing those out correctly, the number of work orders being completed out on site, and a lot of compliance and water quality performance for them. So trying to get that into one view for a team is quite a lot of work. It's quite difficult, but it's a really great outcome. And then right at the top, we have our performance management framework, I should say, not performance management performance, but performance management framework, which is sort of more of our senior manager reporting. And so that's sort of that another step up again, where it's overall safety, overall, employee experience and works management, asset performance. So that's quite new as well, and that's been really, really well received by our our senior management team of O&M. So our general manager Chris Young has really, I guess, led that requirement, and it's been really well received and being promoted across all of SA Water, really. So I would, we sort of expect other business groups to sort of probably do similar things in the future, kind of having a centralized area for all performance. I'll hand back to Josh, who's going to dive into some of the Metro P&T, what we call our P&T Alliance reporting.
Yep. So just a couple of quick examples from me about how, I guess, some recent examples how we've used the Pi Time Series data. So this is an example of one of my old dashboards in the P&T Alliance space. And so it's just a quick example of rolled up Pi data that informs the business and the KPI compliance in the Metro space. So you can see I've circled a couple of examples of failures or soon to be failures that have been highlighted. So it's showing a KPI fail for ammonia at Bolivar, and then also a couple of little problems with nitrogen at Bolivar and Christie's Beach as well. So this data is incredibly important for commercial operations, obviously, because we've signed agreements with external providers such as Suez, and any KPI fail can actually cost Suez money. So it's important for this sort of data to be not only accurate but timely as well, so they can work through their invoicing at the end of each month. The ammonia non-compliance there, you can see the rule is specifically they need to have 95% of samples that are less than 2 milligrams a litre. And you can sort of see in the screenshot on the right-hand side that they've failed that by having a few that didn't meet it. Next slide, Scott. And this is another one from our metro space. So this is where we've used an event frame in Pi that tracks UV disinfection KPI compliance out at Happy Valley. So effectively, the three business rules that we use are on the screen on the left-hand side there in the green sort of text. And if those three business rules are true, then the event frame will generate. So any period longer than 10 minutes in that case is deemed a fail. So there's a couple of reasonably obvious rules that are built in, so that the inlet flow tag having to have a minimum value is one. So there has to actually be water flowing through the UV unit, and the outlet valve has to be open as well. So as long as there's water tracking through the system, then they will be judged against that KPI, essentially. And this is just another recent example. I think it was only from a couple of weeks ago. So this is our regional network monitoring staff are actually able to use the time series data from Pi to burst the diagnosed to diagnose a burst main before SCADA or any customers actually let us know. So you can see in the left-hand graph, there's a tank out at Milcowie in regional SA. It had started, the tank level had started to drop quite gradually over a period of half a day or a day. And then you can see it drops right off. And there's a bit of a messy yellow squiggle there. That's actually the outflow. And when the operators got to the tank, they realized that was actually a result of the water vortexing out of the tank. It was coming out that quick. And so it was splashing past the sensor that was telling them the tank level. So it's all well and good. We know there's a break somewhere, but we don't know where yet. So that's where the graph on the right-hand side helps. So that is a pressure reducing valve out at Warnertown, which is just upstream from where the tank is. And you can see that the pressure of that dropped right off about the same time as the water started vortexing. So yeah, I guess that's a real-time example of how our operators are able to quickly find a problem and then send crews out to fix. So I guess that brings us to the end, Scott. So
yes, it does. So I think we gave you a lot of information, and we probably didn't draw a breath to let you guys jump in with any questions as we went. But we're happy to obviously take any questions or to focus in on anything that of particular interest. I appreciate there was quite a lot of a brain dump there. Yeah.
I think you've stunned everyone.
I've got a question. A couple of questions. Guys, we talked about before with your governance and standardisation. What was the biggest challenge there? Was it aligning the hierarchy with the asset management system?
To be honest, the biggest challenge was getting it started. So it's sort of something that's sort of been in the works for quite a long time, and just getting the funding right and sort of coming back to it. And so it's great that we finally got it going. In terms of I think everyone's fairly on board about the hierarchies approach. It's probably more about that creating that single source of truth, because we have different teams using the data similar, like the same raw data, in slightly different ways, and even defining what a day is. So most of SA Water a day is midnight to midnight. We have certain teams, due to historical reasons, a day is 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. And so, a day is different. And that becomes, really tricky when we're trying to get a single source of truth and how we handle stuff like that. So I think also some of the standardization of calculations and templates, like the GTS guys have got some really great ways of finding some efficiencies in some of our analysis, but then we've got to kind of weigh up, we're using maybe more tags, or it gives us something slightly different. So we're still working through a lot of, it's very early days, to be honest. So we're working through a lot of that, but I think that the biggest one is sort of the definitions of, what is that that truth of data is quite difficult at times. Josh, is there any others that stand out to you?
Yeah, I was going to agree on the I think it's very easy for SA Water to invest money in things out in the field, but we haven't really had a big investment in our technology space for quite some time, and as a result, we're using some reasonably outdated software as well as ideas. And so being able to finally throw some money in the direction of the issue is great. But yeah, bringing along a few of the staff that I guess have been around for 15, 20 years that haven't really had to worry about any of these practices has also been an interesting part of the journey.
Okay. And I'm particularly interested in that automated Python report for your EPA reporting.
Yep. Yeah. Anything in particular?
Did you have your own coders there, or?
Yeah, so this is probably where we are lucky. So the genesis of our team, when I joined 4 years ago, this data team was really a production, what we call production and treatment. So it was very treatment focused. And so at that time, we basically had engineers who were really good at data doing this sort of stuff. When we went through a bit of what we called an operations realignment, and we got a dedicated data team, which is the team that Josh is sort of leading at the moment. And we got to build that team up and we brought in new expertise from outside. And some of these people are pretty amazing. So they have that Python, R coding skills. So most of these were done by one of our guys called Kyle Hutchins. He's fantastic. So the data was all there, but we sort of gave him this mission earlier this year, basically to write some Python scripts, and basically it grabs the data, it does the calculations, and it spits them out into Word reports. And they're relatively, they're pretty much formatted and everything. So internally created, very much a new capability that we're lucky to have. We didn't have that. 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't have that internal capability within our own operations group in particular. We're very lucky. Yeah. And there's no other data team in SA Water as big as ours now. I would say even technology doesn't have a data team as big as us.
And I think it's your next slide, your event frame. The next slide.
I think Josh had one somewhere, didn't you, Josh?
Yeah. So it's just about creating a bunch of rules of if and when.
Yep. Pretty much, yeah. Yep.
So yeah, in this case here, if all those 3 rules are met, then it will generate an event frame. So we use that to generate things like emails to operators to ensure they're on top of the processes that are happening at the plant. So in this case, this would generate a notification for the commercial ops team to let them know there's been a UV fail, as well as a notification for the actual team at the plant so they can shut down the UV treatment unit.
Okay, great, thanks.
They're really powerful event frames. We probably don't use them enough, but we sometimes use it for very bespoke activities. So it might be like some kind of condition that Department of Health is looking at for a wastewater treatment plant, and we can use event frames to sort of do a historical analytics. So how many times did chlorine residual fail or something like that? And it's been really useful a number of times in reporting back to Department of Health for our reuse waters to either sort of come up with a better agreement, or to sort of say it's not really needed, like what you think's happening isn't really happening. So event frames are pretty fantastic, probably underutilized by us, but we kind of know that we can do more with them. We can even use them for the quality of the data. So we have, in some places, we have them for things like stale data from our SCADA system. So if a value hasn't changed for more than 12 hours, it'll send an alarm and say, hey, there's something wrong here with this SCADA node or this communication network. Yeah, they're really great.
Keith, Shane here. We deploy event frames in the infiltration project, but we probably haven't burdened people with the technology terms, but we can, that can be illustrated there. And you're right, event frames it's an extremely powerful tool.
Yeah, often we just say notifications. You will get a notification that this has happened. Yeah, as you say, some of the terminology does get confusing. Any other questions or areas of interest? I think probably can definitely say Josh and I are very happy to talk to people beyond this session. I think Scott, you've got a question?
Yeah, you said these are mainly for operators, but they can be kept inside like the main office so the other people can look at it as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the power of our PI system, is to kind of get the data out of SCADA or Excel sheets or whatnot that people used to do and make it really open for the entire business. So we have teams called treatment expertise. So they are really heavily users of this data for piloting or treatment efficiency projects. Our asset teams use this data for sort of long-term planning. Our water securities teams. Actually, Andrew mentioned earlier, we didn't talk at all about, our major pumping. Like, this is vital for our energy monitoring and our major pumping initiatives, which is very much a cost-saving sort of initiative. And our ZCEF, which is our zero-cost energy future, our sort of solar project and energy projects that we have, all rely on this technology. So definitely not just for operations, but it's vital to operations. If that answers your question.
Yeah.
And there's not, we can use the data in many ways. Yeah. But as I said, I think we're happy to sort of take questions beyond this session, Josh, to help out as well. So yeah.
We'll be happy to facilitate some introductions or pass through any questions. Perhaps in the interest of time, we should move on then. And thanks again for your time, Scott, Josh. Really quite an insight there.
Thanks, guys. Hope we hit the mark. And I know there was a lot of information. Yeah.
It was a lot, but it's interesting.
That's fantastic. Right, Keith, we might hand back over to you to start running with the next part.
Okay, thanks, Shane. So yeah, next part is really to create a space for the 6 councils that are involved in the program here, and also welcome others that have joined in. So the councils are Kempsey, Cassowary up in far north Queensland, Richmond Valley, New South Wales, Moree Plains, Narrabri and Tenterfield. So what I was looking at doing here was, using this forum to be able to create and share our practical experiences and challenges that we have in managing I&I, and how digital tools and analytics can help us to improve our asset management, operations, and overall community outcomes. So I'm really looking for the session to welcome all curiosity and any questions. Have it conversational. Not really about telling, but more about exploring what's out there and what we're doing from, peer-to-peer, what's working at some councils, what they've identified that they need to improve, which those stories and lessons can be learned. So I just want to acknowledge that everyone's at a different stage on their digital journey, their maturity level, that we're all on the same journey, just at different points. We know it's not really about the size of the council as well. We know there's some smaller councils that are doing some absolutely amazing things out there. It's just where we're positioned, and I'm keen to understand this. Is it the appetite of individuals in the field or in the office or collectively with a team, or right up through to a council level. So I've got some questions here. I'll just throw around the room to others really to generate that conversation. So I'll start off with pretty broad questions around, what is the main challenges that you have at your council, and then started getting into some analytics and interrogation and overall value creation. So I guess as us as Kempsey, we're facilitating on this one today. In the room here with me, I've got Christine, who's a networks manager, James Deans, Sewer Assets team leader, Lachlan over there taking notes, he's a senior operator in the Sewer Assets team, and Bobby has joined us. She was a water quality officer, so tagged her in. She would have been quite keen to hear about Scott and Joss's presentation around the data collection. So yeah, I guess I'll throw out to James. What's some of your main challenges here in Kempsey with the I&I?
We're at the point we've got a bit of aging infrastructure within our shire, so it's pretty much trying to pinpoint areas which are creating the most inflow and as well as the infiltration to the mains. We sort of have programs where we run investigating the infrastructure, trying to find key points where we're getting this sort of inflow and infiltration, and trying to narrow down on ways to limit the amount which is getting into our system. And that includes stuff like your smoke testing and CCTV and just our general manhole condition assessments, trying to build up a bit of a digital database to help plan our future works, and and see where that sort of takes us in means of rectifying what we have going on.
Yeah, I might just chime in there. So yeah, our infrastructure is 1940s vintage, all VC, predominantly all of West Kempsey is of that age. We've set up a pretty good program, sort of I&I testing around the place, but then we'll have a problem in another region and we have to pack up and go there. So we often have competing sort of requirements for this team, and to satisfy all sorts of different needs. And they might be from the EPA, may have a problem there, so we'd have to just drop everything what we're doing and then go to another area and doing investigations. And that seems to be the order of the day these days. It's sort of, that's the biggest challenge is satisfying those competing requirements. Would you agree, Gabe?
Yeah, totally. Yep.
So we already do quite well here, I guess, with my experiences, around how we collect our data, but then that's where we store it and what are we actually doing with it. So moving along on our digital journey here, it's the alignment of attribute data, whether it's in our GIS, whether it's in our asset data system, and also financials, and targeting where we have our pinch points in our network. I know you got anything to add there, Lockie?
That was pretty much a good summary of it.
Yep.
Sorry.
Thinking they.
No, I think it's good. Basically, sorry, I'm out of frame. Hi guys.
He's real.
Yeah, I'm real. I started at council here with our RWI a few years ago, and what I'm looking to get out of this is how your operators operate in the field. You mentioned a few times you have a capture app, but never actually mentioned what that capture app was. That feeds into your hire system.
Oh yeah, I know. So
what's the operators level? What are they utilising to feed you that data?
As in what type of information are they collecting? Sorry, or
how are they collecting it?
Yeah, so it's really the stuff that they've always done. So it's your walking around the plant, looking at tank levels and flows, but also their on-site testing laboratory. So your ammonia levels, phosphate levels, turbidities, all that sort of stuff that in the past they would have written on a piece of paper, and then it sort of doesn't go anywhere, or at best it gets put into a spreadsheet. So what they do is they all have a tablet. They can use their phone as well, their work phone as well. And it's just like any other app on their device, on their SA Water device. So they just open it up, and basically what we sort of build it to their requirements. So we build a form, and in that form there's a whole bunch of fields, and it'll sort of, say like, put in that bit of data, like type it in here, like on your tablet. So they'll put, pH is 7.6. And when they submit it, it's designed in a way so that if they don't have a network connection, it'll hold that data until they do. And when the network kicks in, it'll send that straight into Pi. And if there's some kind of report that's picking that data up automatically, it's there straight away, or we just, grab it as we need it. So it's sort of, the point of it is to get rid of some paper and handling and double entry sort of stuff, like paper to Excel or something like that. But it's also to make it really accessible to everybody as well. So it's that site data. It can be really anything, but that's mainly in our treatment teams. It's very much around site data. But the expansions we're looking at are things like some of our bores, and also things like our chlorine, like our dosing stations out in the networks as well, where there's not a lot of information. It's particularly useful for those remote areas where maybe we don't have SCADA or we don't have much SCADA. It can fill in the gaps.
Just on top of that, Scott, we're looking at rolling it out to our metro areas to capture chemical deliveries to the sites. So each of the chemical tanks at the sites have an online sensor which pushes data into Pi, but their actual delivery data was only ever put into finance systems. And so we're now getting the operators to enter it in there. And by doing that, we can fully automate our chemical reporting for the sites.
With you guys measuring and then quantifying your data, what's have you found to be the most effective or the biggest surprising insight, eye opener for you?
That's a great question. It's probably that desire for the data. Like, I think there's a lot of black box stuff that goes on, especially in the field, where they're like entering a lot of the operators are creating so much information, whether it's in our work management apps, which we use sort of Maximo as our asset management, but we have a My Work app where they're producing a lot of content with capture as well. And then they really felt like it's, they're doing a lot of work and it wasn't sort of coming back to them. So that's where I think the teams worked really hard to sort of make these reports that are valuable to the field guys. And it's that efficiency of bringing those reports into one. I think that's the value of it. But I think it was the fact that when I started, there was a lot of, we're doing a lot of work out here. We're entering information left, right, and center. It's taking us time, and we're not getting much back for it. And I think that's what we're trying to turn around. Yeah.
Probably the biggest eye opener for me as well has been the appetite for the data. It seems like the more we can create, the more the staff in the field will want. And so being able to visualize, I guess, some of their business activities has been huge for them. And so their appetites are only increasing. It's not going away.
Yeah. And so, we sort of go, we're very lucky. We're this large data team that, a lot of places don't have, a lot of teams, like area, business groups don't have, but it's I think we have our own report, and I think we've done, I don't know what it's up to now, Josh, like probably 400 data requests that we've captured this year from our teams. So it's just, there is a huge appetite for information and data. Yeah.
Can I ask Scott and Josh, presumably it's taken you guys a relatively long period of time to get to this particular point now where you see these behaviors, right, where people are asking for more and more data. But I wanted to know all the extra information or data requests you get, what are some of the things the operators are using that information for? Like, how have they changed the way that they perform their duties as a result of having access to more data?
I think
I was going to say my best example is probably that one out of the Milk Cowie tank where we've diagnosed a burst main before any customers have actually reported it, or before any SCADA alarms have gone off. So it's now part of the daily routine for those guys that log in and check their dashboards, their network monitoring dashboards, and they're able to sort of identify some suspect behaviour in the data prior to any alarms going off. So by the time the SCADA alarms are going off, that team actually had guys out in the field already on the way to the burst to get the fix underway. So I guess in that way we're saving time, money, and water.
And there's a lot of efficiencies. Like there was another thing we did with we've got a team over at Port Lincoln that looks after the Yulee Basin bores. And so they were like, every morning that one guy would like click through the SCADA pages for something like 56 different bores to see if there's any issues, because we've got some real sort of water security issues over there. And we managed to like bring that all into one sort of page, live Grafana view, where, it was taking him something like 2 hours to diagnose, like to run through and diagnose, are there any faults? Are they on? Are they pumping the water they should be pumping? And, we've sort of been able to deliver an efficiency to that team where they can kind of run through it in a, probably 10 minutes. So I think that combination of, like getting on the front foot early and saving a lot of time is really powerful for them. I don't know how many, like if it's changed their, they still do the things they have to do day to day, but hopefully we're helping them do it more efficiently.
Awesome. And maybe one more question. Have you had any pushback from people, introducing, let's say, data-driven ways of doing things, different ways of doing things, the way they've done it a certain way historically or for a long period of their careers? Yep. Has there been that sort of stuff, and how do you approach that with those people?
Absolutely. There can be. There can be people who don't think it's going to work, or don't want to really change. They like their spreadsheets. They can be really difficult conversations. I think most of the time, once we can prove the value of the change, that's the important part, is that, you want to make change for good reason, not just because. So, and I think once we start, like those examples Josh gave, the efficiency piece, once they start to see that, that's sort of where I think the positivity comes in. But a lot of people get it straight away as well. So it's just everyone's a little bit different in that way. You do get different ideas. And what we end up sometimes doing is, like, especially with capture, that thing I was talking about where we design the forms, you start getting, well, I like to work this way. I go and do X, Y, Z, and someone else says, well, I do ABC, and we're trying to standardize even those forms so that everyone's, approaching it the same way. But people have their personal preference, so we've got to navigate that without sort of, giving everyone their own unique. We can't support completely unique solutions all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hey, we got one question here from Bobby.
Yeah, hi. I've got a question. I guess it's more about naming conventions. So for our assets at our plants or reservoirs or pumping stations, they're, I guess, a non-mobile entity. So you've got a fixed location for the naming for pull that data back out. What have you found for your naming conventions for the more mobile entries? Let's just say we've got a breakage, we've got a piece of pipe, we're recommissioning it, we've got water quality testings, and then over periods of time there might be multiple breaks in that section, but being able to pull that data back out where those items are more random across the network than actual physical dosing points or reservoir pumping stations, etc.
Josh, you might be better to answer this one, but I think it's just like our asset hierarchy does collect a lot of information about different work. So it's not just the asset, classifications, but it's also the types of work, the types of breaks, the types of remediation. So we can kind of slice that data in a lot of different ways to tell a different story, and we have to be a bit careful sometimes because you might the data's being entered out in the field, so it's of a certain quality. So sometimes it's easy to jump to conclusions. But yeah, it's mobile data. Like we have some mobile chlorinators, for instance, that are on trailers, and they are difficult because they get moved around sometimes and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say we have they obviously have a SCADA. We tend to align to those other, whether it's a SCADA naming scheme or a Maximo, like an asset naming scheme, we tend to align where we can. One of the difficulties we have, you guys touched on it yourselves, is like that our Maximo asset hierarchy doesn't have any direct connection to our SCADA hierarchy. So when we're in that in between where we want to pull those things together, we're doing that very manually. We don't have any links between SCADA naming conventions and Maximo naming conventions. It's a gap for us as well.
Yeah, that's our biggest, I guess, that challenge in getting that unification, because we all use obviously multiple systems that talk multiple languages and move in multiple systems. They've all got different naming conventions. So yeah, I guess it's that time and that development of sitting back from scratch and going, hey, what's the central depository and how does everything talk, and what's that naming convention going to be like to bring all those different pathways into what you mentioned earlier, is like a true knowledge centre.
Yeah. We've got some sort of tools that are helpful. So the tag management system, but it doesn't connect to Maximo. We also have Calibra, so that's our sort of data dictionary, our corporate data dictionary. So we're hoping that's going to become really useful down the track, where we can start sort of getting all this information, this metadata, where we can kind of say, look, here's a report, it's pulling these different data sources, it's connecting this and this. So there is a future. I wouldn't say there's a decision on how the best way of doing that, but our team sort of, we have done some really, we've got team members who have done some really great work where they've done it very manually though. This tag matches this asset. Here's the Power BI that shows you that information all in one. Super powerful, but it was very manual to get it together. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. Claire, you've got your hand.
Thanks. I was actually just going to ask about your tag management system in relation to that previous question as to, where is it built? What is it linked to? But I think, so one, manual, Power BI, not linked to Maximo. So I think you've answered most of it. But
yeah, the TMS itself is automated every day from our SCADA historian. So it is a live connection to the SCADA historian. I think it, like almost all our systems, updates overnight. Yep. It's just a little bit, it doesn't seem like we can stretch it any further though. That's the issue I think we're having, where we would love to start putting in more information, and our SCADA team is sort of saying, look, we're having some issues with it. So I don't know exactly why that is, but I was really hoping that we could the next step would be, well, here's some really valuable pi calculation tags that should go in there and people can find them. I suspect that we'll need to use Calibra for that instead and put it into our corporate dictionary. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, guys. We've got some presentations coming up from Graham and Claire and Simon. But before we go there, I might just throw us all Johan in the crowd there from Richmond Valley. I just want to get his quick insights about what led him or Richmond Valley to go for a digital or data-driven approach at their council.
Thanks. I guess we're still in our infinite shoes. We're still, I guess, we're just starting this this approach, and James can maybe assist. But for us, you know, in towns like Casino, we have inflow issues that with fairly small rain events, we go from 3 megs to 30 megs at the treatment plant, and we've been sort of struggling to find, you know, it's when I came here, it sort of felt like, oh, it's an easy fix. There's going to be a manhole somewhere in a creek that's got a broken hole in it or something, you know, because it just seems so crazy that it goes up so quickly and then drops down quite quick after rain events as well. So it's well and truly inflow, but we just cannot identify it. And we've been going through fixing and inspecting smoke testing and dye testing and fixing and repairing, but it just doesn't seem to really show a difference. And that's why we sort of thought, well, maybe if we go down, you know, this monitoring stage where you can look at the data at each pump station in each catchment, and you can actually try and record, you know, your small wins, because I think we do have small wins, but we just don't see it at the moment. And it's sort of frustrating to feel like you're spending a lot of time and effort, but you just can't see any results, or it's yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing there, Graham.
Yeah, I think your comment, Shane, strikes a chord with most councils where you come into this, into these fields and you think it must be easy. There's a manhole open and be easy to find. We got the same situation, and that was exactly the same thinking. There must be a manhole in the creek, so you go looking every creek for a manhole with a hole in the side, and there it is. But yeah, we're still looking as well, and we seem to find, like, we get internal surcharges in rain events, and you think you fix it by fixing a manhole, relining it, or smoke testing, or relining the sewer. But then the next storm event, you get another 2 properties undergoing internal surcharges in a totally different location that's never happened before. I think not sure whether it's just an ongoing process or whether it's just something that you've got to keep monitoring, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that for us was the thing is, you know we've found some major sort of inflow issues, but then at the same time, there must be more, you know, so it sort of feels like the problem is every rain event is different and it sort of varies. So there's so many variables that, you know, it's hard. And I think if we can try and track with having flow meters at the pump stations, or just the hours, and linking that to rain gauges, hopefully we can sort of, I guess, try and see if we're making a difference or not. But yeah, it's not going to be an easy fix for us.
You get some data analytics to help with your decision making. Joe Percy, it looks like you're from Albury, is that right?
Yeah, g'day Keith, how are you?
Sorry, saw the shirt there, mate. Yeah.
No, oh geez, well spotted.
Yep.
No, that's really interesting to hear, Johan. I mean, we're probably does a slightly different stage, but similar journey. I got Chris on the line with us as well. Where we are at Albury City, so a couple of years ago, Chris was part of an inflow and infiltration study. I think Chris led it with Mott McDonald. And what came back from that was a number of, I guess they focused on 20 catchments within our network. And what came back from that is there is some infiltration we're seeing, but it's largely inflow is what our issue is. And there were a number of recommendations from that, where we're looking to go with our path, with our journey now. They've mentioned to focus on catchments with no more than sort of your 500-600 connections. We're a combination of gravity and sort of pumped sewer flow, so rising mains as well. But where we can look at this, we can largely capture sub-catchments in that sort of anywhere from 300 to 500 properties, and then be able to install, we're looking at installing sewer level sensors at all those points. That way we can start to build up a bit of a historical database to see where we've been seeing the flows change during either storm events or when we know, if the river's in flood and your sort of groundwater does increase from an infiltration point of view in the southern area of town, you can try and build a bit more of that understanding of, is it inflow, is it infiltration, but over a longer time period. For this study, they did have sensors installed while they did the study, but we want to be able to sort of set our baseline now, and then really start our journey into trying to make improvements and be able to track those changes over time. Are we actually really having an impact, or are we not? And now, the approach we're looking at taking, I'm keen to hear other people's thoughts. Is this a sensible approach? Is it not? We're looking at putting initially probably around 40 to 50 sewer level sensors in at all these subcatchment areas to capture no more than, ideally, that sort of anywhere from 500 to 600 properties. Then from there, we're looking hopefully next year at running our first pilot of really diving into one of those subcatchments, and doing a lot of, or basically checking every property along there. So checking all the ORGs, all the IOs, any downpipes, that they're, to ensure that they're correctly connected into the stormwater, not into the sewer network. We're probably looking to subcontract that out because we don't have the availability with teams internally initially, and hopefully we can learn from that, and maybe then we can start to build an internal team that is focused on I&I, and we send them. That subcatchment, we'll have another sort of 30 of those subcatchments, and then they can start, if we see an improvement in that subcatchment, and that sort of sewer level sensor that captures everything that's gravity fed from there, we can then hopefully expand that into all the other subcatchments. But we'll also, as part of that, have to look at all our council infrastructure as well, all the manholes, all the sewer mains outside of private connections. That's the kind of journey we're looking to go on.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. You got some great inputs there that you can pull into a hopefully a one common system and help you with your future directions.
So we're at a similar place, except we have the teams that do the I&I. We do the household smoke and dye testing, and every time we move into a new area, it's quite amazing what we find. You've really got to go into those areas with an open mind, because you'll expect to find one thing and you can find something else completely. And you have to look at everything really holistically too, because often there'll be a pump problem that causes, a leaking seat on a pump, or it can give you major grief, which makes it appear that you have this I&I problem, which is a lot worse than it actually is. We've found the elusive manholes in the swamps with the holes in them, and we got videos of all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, boots on the ground is the way to go. This sort of stuff, these remote level sensors really will be able to help you home in on that, especially if you've got really big reticulations like we have. So you're the other end where we're doing the manual stuff, but we need that automation to show us where things are so we can highlight.
Targeted response. James, Richmond Valley.
Hi, sorry earlier for speaking with my mic unmuted. My question is, so a bit of context, our council has gone down the path of trialling, or when I say trialling, we've just deployed maybe 15 sensors in a smallish catchment manhole level sensors, and we're using caliper. It's more of a question out to all the other councils who probably has started using sensors in the network, and whether you guys have any success in sort of honing down on that INI. We sort of deployed them sort of August-ish, and unfortunately, we haven't had any rain to sort of test out the theory that, you know, these sensors could possibly help us narrow down where the hot spots of these INI is coming from or into the network. Has any other council sort of been able to do that with their deployments, or use the data so far in the G-Ghost to sort of hone in on where they need to focus their efforts?
So Kempsey, we're just in that infinite stage now to use that as another data input. Yeah. So look, great question, James, but just be mindful of time at 11:30. We might circle back to that, but we might hear from Claire and Graham. And so I might throw to Claire, if you could bring up your presentation and content.
Sure. 2 secs. My share screen is not available for some reason. Only meeting organisers and presenters.
Okay. Right. I thought that was okay. There was some background work that was meant to be done for that, Claire.
No problems. I can talk.
Okay. Alternatively, we could check if that was done for Graham, and start with Graham, and we'll try to work you out in the background.
I'll just go for it, Graham, if you can, and I will just quickly send my slide to Shane.
Okay.
Yep, no worries. I think hopefully mine's working. I assume it's come up on the screen.
It has. Yeah.
Yep. So just start our II programs sort of started back in about 2012. We got grant funding approved to build a new wastewater treatment plant. And obviously you need some flow data just to determine how big your sewer treatment plant needs to be. I'll just see if I can get on what our old sewer treatment plant used to look like, built in the 1920s or 30s. That was a new part actually that we can see there. But we had no usable data on actual inflow into the sewer treatment plant. So it's pretty hard to build a new treatment plant without any flow data to base it on. So we had temporary flow data put in a couple of years before for a 3-month period, but then that only determined flow with a 10 mil rain event. So we had no data on big rain events, how that would affect the flow and how much inflow we had. So we went down the path of installing 9 flow gauges in our different catchments. And that's how we determined where we're going to put them, just a mud map drawn up on the wall with a thick coloured crayon, as the town planners normally do. And we decided to put the flow meters in roughly the locations that would determine how much flow was coming out of each catchment. Not quite exactly. It was pretty hard to split some of the catchments up, but it was pretty close to how much flow each catchment was producing. That went on for a number of years. We built the treatment plant based on the flow figures from those gauges. We still have them in place now. And they produce some very different information from that temporary flow gauge. And we met up with Shane back in, it was February 21, Shane, when we had our first meeting, when you came to council with that presentation on how you could help us determine how much inflow we were getting into our sewer treatment plant. Wow. And roughly 3 months later, we actually accepted his proposal. It took a long time, but you're very persistent, Shane. And that produced the following table where it showed how much flow came in through each rain event. You can see the graph in the top left. There's like a normal type of flow with the weekend flows and a couple of rain events coming through. And we had a cost of how much it cost to produce, to treat a megalitre of effluent. So we had a pretty good idea how much this inflow, any extra flow, was going to cost us. As you can see, I think this is only over about a 3-month period when I took this snapshot, and you can see like $15,000 roughly in extra flow of inflow coming in is what it was costing us. So that's a normal flow over that 3-month period. Back in, let's try and get the date again. Back in 24, you can see we had not a very big rain event, 20 mil, I think it was, in that period. And you can see that we had, you can't see on this table, but we had 12 meg of effluent coming into our system when we normally only have 2 meg a day coming in. So it was like a massive rain event that eventuated in massive flows being received through it. That led, after sharing this information with the operators, I'm not sure whether the other people at the treatment plant, they have the PID flow for your coagulant in the treatment plants, or the diurnal flow. So we normally go with the PID flow, just based on the flow coming in, you dose to that amount of flow. But seeing those figures and how much it was costing us per rain event, we come up with the protocol. If the rain event was predicted, we switched to the diurnal flow, which is a set figure of 15 litres per hour. And as you can see, they estimated it was saving up to about 200 litres of coagulant per rain event, per 20 mil rain event, which saved a lot of money straight up from at the treatment plants. That led to, after more discussions with the team at Ghost, our biggest time waster, especially like my time consumer, was the DPI reports and the other reporting that everyone has to go through. So we come up with a way of just have the basic SCADA tags. I think there was only in those questions straight out of the previous DPI reports, you can see there was only about 3 SCADA tags needed to be able to answer those questions, which saved me like an enormous amount of time every year to produce that report. And it didn't take that much work to just some basic analysis of the data coming in through those 3 SCADA tags. That obviously led on to further iterations and more tags being fed into our system. But now the engineers at Ghost have moved on to producing water balances for our water system, which is becoming more useful. Like everyone else, the more information you can get, the better information, the better decisions you can make. And even have been able to tell my managers, my directors, exactly what's going on after every read. It's highly beneficial. Just looking at these figures, though, it was made very clear that some of the data wasn't accurate. And I was curious, like you were saying, Scott, that you want a single source of truth. And without someone monitoring that information coming in, like the source of truth could be like totally wrong. And so I was only working with the engineers at Ghost, and I see Tom's on there. His help's been invaluable. We were able to hone, like you were saying, hone the data down and find out where the data was wrong. Like some of these, the unbilled metered consumption, we had to delve into that information from our billing data to work out where that information was inaccurate. And this is one of our first runs at, as you can see, in the water, the ILI data, where they want, I think they wanted about 8%. And these were the figures that we were getting from the initial data that we were getting from the system. And just a gut feel, you know that you're not going to have that much leakage in your system. If you were, it would be running down the street, be able to see it. So after more meetings with the engineers, we were able to refine the data and work out flow meters that weren't being captured or other ones that were that shouldn't be captured. And so we're able to get more realistic figures from that data. But just reviewing the data makes you realise that you need to do some work to be able to get decent data to make decisions. If you're just based on this data and you send that up without reviewing it, yeah, the directors and the GM wouldn't be very happy with your area. Another system that we've moved into is, I think it was mentioned earlier, I can't remember who mentioned it, the bore data from your extraction sources. So those figures are used to be manually read meter reads that they'd have to travel 30 k's over to the bore fields to be able to read those meters once or twice a month, and it wasn't very accurate data. You could only get it at the end of every month. But now through Ghost's help, we're able to get those figures in real time through SCADA tags. And the latest in our journey of data acquisition, we're moving on to getting electricity data, and we're doing some work with our electricity providers to get interval data from our sites. And as you can see, this dashboard quickly shows how your pumps and bores are operating and how much it's costing you to move your water around your areas. This one especially is quite interesting to see how much it's costing us per bore, and that may influence which bore you will preference in the future, just based on how much it's actually costing you to get the water out of the ground. But once again, some of this data, you need to constantly review it, and we've found a couple of anomalies in some of the data, which it's a constant process to refine to make sure that your data is accurate. Yeah, and that's our journey in our data acquisition, where it started from just the II program, working out where our how much water we were treating that we shouldn't be treating, and go back to your insight, Johan, about how you target your II program. When we reviewed the data on how much water was coming into the plant, you could see that it was a sharp increase in the water coming in. So you knew that you had some inflow, but then it was taking days to tail off. We had like high flows for a number of days after each rain event. So we knew we had a lot of infiltration as well in the system. So we basically had to go through a program of inspecting manholes and CCTV, as everyone does, but then we realised you had to reseal the manholes as well as change the lids to be able to prevent the water getting in from in your system. Now that's had a pretty good effect that we don't get the high inflow that we used to. I was just having a quick look at the data before, and we had I think it was back in 22, we had an 18 meg come through the plant in our 3 meg sewer treatment plant. And 24, we had another 12 meg rain event day. But the last year, I think we're down to about 4 meg as a peak flow through our treatment plant. So the program, it's taken a number of years, as you can see, like 3 or 4 years, but it's starting to pay off now. But still a constant process evolving on inspecting and analysing the data. Cheers. Any questions?
Great. Thanks, Graham. Again, just being mindful of time, we might be able to Claire's presentation if she's right to go. But thank you, Graham.
I think you're okay to go, Claire. So I'm told.
Yep.
Perfect.
Just on mute.
Except you're on mute, Claire.
Sorry, technology. Hey, single slide, but I guess the lead in. So we flagged that yes, we wanted to look at our digitisation or journey a couple of years ago, and yeah, through talking to Shane and D-Host, we set up a infiltration dashboard, and it was probably at a time when we had absolutely everybody looking at SCADA data and manual in the actual SCADA program itself. And so we pretty much had very little governance and security over our ability to operate through SCADA, causing a couple of problems. Needed to spend a fair bit of time, resources, money on improving that situation. But as the first step, we were looking at how do we get our data out of SCADA and a few other sources so that we could, at a management engineering level, review data without impacting our ability to operate and make mistakes in that platform. So I think we quite effectively did that at a very at a starting point with looking at infiltration. But then we started using that data for a different reason, and I guess with interest, I like the presentation of South Australia water in relation to single source of truth data, even that the implication of when does a day start at 12 or 7 or 8, and what impact that has on what you're looking at. So this slide shows what we thought was an event that we were chasing, in which we thought somebody was illegally dumping into our system. And it kept happening every Saturday afternoon, basically, as we thought through looking at our GHOST dashboard. But our dashboard was set up to look at I&I, and what we weren't aware of is the impact of what a glitch in our SCADA data would do to that. And essentially we were looking at it and interpreting it in a way that it wasn't meant to be interpreted. So it was working fine for I&I. We understood how it worked, but then we took it as this must be happening. This is a truth. Trying to find a situation where somebody was going out of their way to dump something into our sewer system every Saturday afternoon. And very quickly, and I guess the reason why this is interesting is we forgot to introduce, how we implemented this across the team was I&I related, but then we started using it for something else, and we didn't really check back on what we were trying to achieve in the project. And all of a sudden, we've got a group of operators and supporting technicians and engineers who were sort of saying, well, you know, why can't it work for this, and why shouldn't we be able to do this, that, and the other? And we've sort of gone back to say, well, yep, pretty early in the journey, and we've sort of proven a point that that we should be in the space where you can use your historian data from SCADA and automate. Sorry. And in an automated way, be able to analyze the data outside of your SCADA system. But we've really got to be at a point where we're teaching ourselves and teaching our system what we want to do. And that's why I was interested in, the conversation about your tag management system and how you're linking the naming convention and your hierarchy in SCADA to asset management systems and so forth as well. So it was just a learning that we've had from our journey.
And the key takeaway there to always remain aligned and on focus of what you're actually trying to achieve.
Yep,
That's a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions there from the room on that one?
Keith, I'll probably, Shane here quickly, probably say that one of the things that we do see, and this just supports the that whole importance of understanding data and governance of data, is that and we've heard it from other people, so it's not us as a partner, but when a system like this is applied, it does put a spotlight on where the information's coming from, and information that perhaps it hasn't been seen outside SCADA for other particular reasons, it suddenly is exposed as being, well, is that right? Is that wrong? It doesn't look like it's calibrating very well, and it does have wider benefits as well. So it's not, it is something we've seen quite a bit, and it's usually part of the early part of a journey that people take as they move data out of SCADA systems into historians, etc.
Yeah, you've got good confidence in the value that the analytics has brought, Claire.
For me, it was more of a it was how we were getting people on board. So we're lucky enough, like small regional council, but we do have a trades team. The couple of electricians that we've got on board are very much into the OT and SCADA, and probably lesson learnt was we didn't get them involved, that team involved at the right time. So they were pretty critical of what we were doing, because SCADA is the space and historian, and if I went and asked these very clever guys, can you just pull out this trend, I want to do this, that and the other, they'd do it. So I guess I was trying to automate a process that was going to move away from asking for help at that level. So a bit more effort in explaining why the importance of doing this would have got them on board in a different way from the get-go.
Yeah, that's a great one for everyone, really. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions there, or questions from Graham's presentation?
Yeah, I have a question, please. Hi everyone. Chris Murphy from Albury City Council. Graham, I just wanted to know, when you talked about your flow gauges, you had, I think you said 9 in the network. Just curious about the type of flow gauges. Are they just depth sensors that you're inferring flow, or were they proper flow gauges? And we'll start there.
Yeah, just depth gauges. So they just measure the depth of the sewer. They do have their issues, but they were most economical at that stage when we had to put them in.
Yeah, that's good. I think because we're just at the point where we're looking to get the sensors in the network, like Joe was saying, 40 to 50 sensors up front, big investment. Just want to make sure we're getting something that's going to be, or give us enough accuracy in terms of picking up. It's probably more about the flow patterns without getting down into 1, 2, 3% accuracy. Like, so I've heard the depths, a radar depth sensor, you might only get sort of within 15% accuracy of the actual flow by the time you factor in roughness coefficients and pipe grades and things. So just curious, I think, James, you were saying you've got caliper sensors in, which is just a radar sensor as well. So
yes, we've got the caliper sensors. They are not without issues. So they are susceptible to, I guess, things in your maintenance holes reflecting the the radar in various places, and he may start thinking the level is at a particular height when it really is not. So you may need to tell it to ignore those particular measurements. We're still learning about how to commission them, and I think Caliper, kudos to them, is that they've been really supportive and really responsive to helping us get it right, because no two manholes are the same. So we get some manholes at the moment, we're getting really good sort of minute changes in the flows, and there are still some where we are, I guess, still fine tuning the settings in the sensors. Something we didn't anticipate when deploying these sensors is the connectivity to our Telstra network. So in a rural town, we just assume that Telstra is the best, but maybe that's something we should have tested, because in our town, apparently we've got 2 Optus towers as opposed to 1 Telstra tower. So we're still going through that process with Caliper to try and deploy some Optus powered IoT devices to check the connectivity. Yeah, we haven't had any rain, so we don't know how well they perform, to try and get us some information about the I&I stuff.
Just on that, James, Caliper have a couple of different sensors they offer. Are you able to say which ones you've been working with?
The Spectre.
Spectre, okay. We, I guess we have gone down a journey purchasing some sensors in the past we've used to kind of create our own sewer level sensors. This is sort of pre the calipers and the other ones coming out. We've run into a number of issues with those, but one thing we did find is you can get an external sensor. So we initially installed these in probably a 1500 thick concrete manhole, and we had no connectivity underneath that. So there's a company that we found down in Melbourne, and they had external sensors. We're able to just drill a small hole through the concrete and externally mount it. And that's, I mean, effectively a 4G antenna, which is trafficable. So if you did want to put it on a manhole that's on a roadway, they are applicable for that as well. I assume Caliper sort of support with all that, but if you do have any issues with that down the track, I can let you know what those are.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think yeah, we've also experienced issues where cars park on top of a manhole, and you can sort of see that because on the weekends you don't get any data, and then when they go off to work and on a Monday morning, your data floods back in. So
no, that's fair. Whether you can get an external and mount it up on the sidewalk or something, I don't know.
Yeah,
as long as the data's coming through on the Monday.
Look into.
Just Graham.
Yeah, sorry, Joe.
Sorry, just going to ask Graham if you had a few issues with the sensors you first put in, Graham. Are you able to sort of touch on what those sensors were or what the issues you had with those?
Our flow sensors, the type that go inside the pipe, and they just measure the depth going over the top of the, I'm not sure what they're called, the band. They have a band that goes inside the pipe, and they measure the depth and then determine the flow based on that. We did have a couple of radar ones closer to the plant, but they started reading high as they went on, and it wasn't until we realised that where the main sewer coming in had flattened out, and so it was depositing silt just upstream of the flow gauge, so the flow was reading higher than what it actually was. That was one of the flow gauges. The other ones, they require constant maintenance, so they drop out periodically. So we have an annual maintenance round by the contractor where they come through and fix up a lot of the gauges, but that's an ongoing process. Quite expensive too. It's becoming more expensive. So if you don't get them maintained, you'll see them dropping out. And then obviously the accuracy of those type of gauges, like you said, could have up to 15% errors in some of the flows.
What sensors were they, Graham?
The actual name of the sensors, I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and check what they're actually called. Just know that, yeah, when they install them, it's just a band that goes inside it and the water flows over the top, and they measure how much water is flowing over the top.
Thanks for that. That's good info.
Okay, we've hit 12 o'clock. We did have another presentation, Simon Page from Cassowary Coast, but he is unavailable, dealing with other matters. So we might look to wrap up there. Just want to say thank you to all that presented and participated today. There's a lot of untapped value in data that is there. So just between yourselves and your teams, have a think about what stood out for you, and and have a think about your own data and I&I strategy. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to Shane and GTS for hosting this session and making it happen. And for me, I look forward to the next forum, whenever that may be, Shane.
Yeah, look, thanks, Keith, for facilitating, and thanks everyone for being there. Just from our perspective, again, we wanted to just provide some sort of forum based on our experience for people to share, and really the last comment's all about sensors and devices is kind of, look, it's not our thing. That we care about the data, but the reality is these are the things that feel that can be, a forum like this can help people out. And obviously then if you want contacts, that's great, we can do that and we can help facilitate those. And look, really we'd probably enjoy some feedback on what you think could work better about these forums, but what you might like to hear in the next forums. And look, a suggestion is we obviously are doing some collaboration with places like Kempsey, but if we ran another forum in December, we'd like to think that there is actually results from that by that stage. And so it's another view on what we could draw out. And again, we're just open to ideas. So feed something back, and we'd love to do it again. So thanks very much for everyone. Please enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll look forward to seeing you either online or perhaps out on some sites, sometime in the near future.
Thank you.